As we roll into 2026, we're still on the book of Isaiah because it's a big old book and there's a lot of stuff in it. Today we're doing chapters 38 to 41. Is that right? Yes, that is right. And this throws back to what we looked at back in the book of 2 Kings, episode 97, I think it was, where Hezekiah is being told he's going to die, and then he weeps bitterly, and then somehow that seems to sort of change God's mind, and Isaiah tells him he's going to get another 15 years. And it was very much sceptical Jenny face at that point, and it's still sceptical Jenny face at this point, because that just doesn't sound very likely. Not that I think it particularly matters in the grand scheme, so we'll soldier on. But if you recall, it talked about Hezekiah was going to get all his stuff nicked by the king of Babylon, which was Sennacherib, was it, I think, at that point, and that his descendants were going to be taken as eunuchs for the Babylonian king. Hezekiah seemed oddly kind of cool with this, because it meant that he was going to have another 15 years and it was all going to be grax and groovy because that stuff was going to happen in the future. So clearly a terrible grandfather. From there, anyway, we go to chapter 40, which seems to have no link with 39, and it just goes into this big speech that basically delivered by God, or at least through Isaiah. A lot of it reading just how great God is. It's not the sort of thing that ages particularly well. But as it happens, I just had my birthday on Christmas Day, and for my birthday I got a new Bible. I say new Bible, it's 150 years old. It smells fantastic. And it's this family thing that's supposed to be, I think in the blurb in the beginning it talks about being accessible to all families. So you think, oh, nice sensible sized Bible. And I thought I'd quickly read you a little bit from the Bible, my new one, just to show you how weird this stuff is. I should add that the these and thous are all in this because it's really old, stuff falling over. So it's even more difficult to read than a modern Bible. But when I'm talking about God, the way he's talking, it's quite key, I think. So this is quite a good way to illustrate that. It'd be a fun way to show you my funky new toy. In chapter 40, verse 12, we have, "Who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or being his counsellor, hath taught him? With whom took he counsel, and who instructed him, and taught him in the path of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding." It's brilliant, that Bible. It's definitely my favourite present this year, but you can see it's the Bible is more accessible, at least these days. Sometimes when I'm doing the reading for this, I sit and I read it off my phone in a coffee shop. It's kind of, couldn't really do that with this sort of thing. But there's no getting around the fact that the way God speaks in this is just, it's difficult. I read the Quran last year and found that sort of reads in a bit of a sort of Donald Trump sort of I am great kind of way. And God does that as well sometimes in the Bible. And it's if a person talked like that, it would be absolutely awful. And it's difficult for anyone to say anything like that without sounding a bit like Donald Trump. It talks as well anywhere in there about prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. I vaguely recall that from something before. I don't know where I spoke. So I googled it, looked it up anyway, and apparently that's talking about John the Baptist, who's coming as the sort of precursor to Jesus in several hundred years' time. So I mean, we're still talking a very long way off yet. But basically, this speech from God goes on quite some time, and it's challenging, and it doesn't make him sound particularly likeable. You almost wonder if that's part of the Old Testament's PR problem. So you've got the genocide issue and stuff, which we've already tackled. And just the difficulty of someone who talks like that. It's difficult not to read that in human terms. And difficult as well, I suppose, in the sense that my understanding is that when Jesus comes along, he doesn't do that. I gather he does make clear what he is and that he's a big deal, but not in that sort of language. So there's something slightly jarring. That why does God talk like that, but Jesus doesn't, if they're supposed to be the same thing? But then in turn, that begs the question of what is a prophet? And obviously someone who proclaims the word of God sort of thing. But is it like God phones them up, dictates a speech, and then they relay it word for word? Or, given that we've had God talk about how he tends to reveal things to people through dreams and visions and sort of slightly abstract things like that, is it a case of Isaiah goes to sleep one night, has this dream, wakes up in the morning, goes, God has shown me this thing, and then has to put it into his own words, and then what we actually read in the Bible is their interpretation of what they saw and what their vision from God was. I realise that gets very tricky in terms of the idea about whether the Bible is the inspired word of God. Because Isaiah could come out with some really chunky language like that, this difficult speech, and I guess that would be inspired by God. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's what God might have said had he delivered the speech directly himself, maybe. I don't know. It's so many levels of interpretation that make it very, very difficult. Anyway, regrettably, I've got my Bible down off the shelf now, so I've got to figure out how to put that thing back up without putting my back out. I have to work out a better system for doing this. But otherwise, we shall move on and see what's next.